Yep. All right, now I think we're live. So welcome to the PACM TV, where we are honored to present an esteemed panel comprising of Dr. Truth Bay, Brother One Pandy, Russ Hosing, and Brother Glenroy, who will explore this year's theme for PACM African Liberation Day, which is the Grand African Renaissance Part 5. It's Africa's time now, a roadmap to unity. And I'd first like to say the Pan-African Congress movement, which emerged from the 5th Pan-African Congress in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania in 1974, has been a steadfast advocate of African unity and liberation since the formation of the Pan-African Committee in 1975 and its subsequent evolution in 1977 to the Pan-African Congress movement. The PACM is now celebrating 51 years of African Liberation Day being held in the UK. PACM continues to exemplify a commitment to the principle of African unity and empowerment for the African continent and its diaspora, fostering an environment of hope, collaboration, as we collectively chart a path towards prosperity in the future. So at this point, what I'd like to do, I'd like to go over to the panel, and as was discussed, I'll start with Brother Glenroy, who's have a wealth of experience on the road of Pan-Africanism. So Brother Glenroy, I first like to start by asking you to say give a brief introduction to yourself, and also give a brief comment on the theme of today's day, which is a Grand African Renaissance. Africa time is now, the roadmap to unity, as it relates to you over there in Tanzania. Brother Glenroy?
Thank you, my brother, and thank you to the PACM members, our family. I'm trying to remember the times that I've been on this particular part of the program and prefer to be on site as always. And I remember those times very well. So I will very much, because of my location, be unable to join you for the physical meeting. Thank you for reminding us about the Pan-African Congress that we're here. And as you said, the organization came out of those events here in Tanzania. I've only been here last 3 years, and it's a journey that I was destined to make anyway, because I've never considered myself just today relaying the idea that somehow, and I'm not by any means belittling anybody else's sense of nationality, but I've never quite grasped calling myself a Jamaican, but I appreciate that others do. But for me, Jamaica was a prison for our people. So I always give the example, and I know people are not all familiar with the UK, but there's a prison in the UK, Holloway prison, which was a woman's prison. And I always give the scenario that well, if my mother was pregnant, before she went into Holloway prison and then gave birth to me in Holloway, do I then call myself an Hallowenian? Do I take on the identity of that prison? So I've always been a little skeptical and resistance to being named by these nationalities. So Tanzania wasn't necessarily where I set my mind to. I decided to come home once I've retired, and where I was when I decided to retire was where I am. So there's no romantic uh, spiritual association with that. I simply made that decision. But also, for quite some time, I've been following the situation here during Mangafuri time, and clearly this presented an opportunity. I still think it does. I still believe it does. But in relation to African Liberation Day, I've been asking and questioning, what are we doing here in Zanzibar for African Liberation Day? And quite frankly, I've not found out anything being done. But there is a bank holiday coming up, and I think it's Wednesday, which will be the 27th. So there isn't an event, a national event, here on the motherland. That is something that we have to return to. So I hope other parts of the continent will be having events. I've received a number of information about other parts of the continent. But wherever we find ourselves, we should challenge that absence of that need for African Liberation Day. We're having enough trouble with people trying to change it to Africa Day as if we are liberated. So that is part of the struggle. But an additional aspect of it now, it seems, is to actually get people where a Pan-African Congress was held to continue to do that work. And that means there's a job of work to be done. It doesn't mean that we're not in our time. It means we must identify it, grasp it, and make it our own. So that's not about me, which is what I think you asked me to say.
Well, it was just to give a little background, because I know you're, for instance, a part of GAC, Global African Congress. So
I worked in the UK for many years, too many years to really want to remember. I'm so glad to be out of it. But it's my parents took me there at a very young age, and I was there for quite a few years. I worked on the public transport system in London. I was a train driver for many, many years. Whilst I was doing that, I was very much involved in the trade union movement and the anti-apartheid movement. I was an executive member of the British anti-apartheid movement and an active member within my trade union to make sure African people were at the forefront of activity within the trade union, especially around issues of liberation struggle, and certainly very much involved in the situation in Southern Africa at the time and the war in Angola.
okay, Glenroy, say another 10 seconds and then we'll
that's really it.
We'll come
very
back
much
to it.
Involved. Yeah. But just to say, because suspect we're going to get on the situation in Southern Africa.
Yes,
very much something that I was very much involved in supporting the solidarity work around that. Thank you, Jeff.
So we'll definitely. Okay, thanks you, Brother Glenroy, for that introduction. And now I'd like to ask Brother Juan Pandy to do the same. Let's give a brief introduction to yourself, and in relation to the title, what does that mean to you?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. I'm very grateful to be here among the elders to try and learn something also from it. My name is Wenpanyarde Alain Rwamba, chairman of Burkina Faso community. I'm straight from Burkina Faso. And relating to the topic, like the brothers had it, for me, African Renaissance is is Liberation Day is a great day for Africans to be able to celebrate that day and to focus on the Liberation Day. Saying that, like the elders just said here, most places in Africa are not even aware of those days that happening in the continent. So it's probably work to be done on that perspective. So that all the continent should be celebrating these days of African liberation. So I won't be long. I'm gonna pass the word.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I'd like to pass over to Russ Hosing. It's the same. It's a brief introduction to let the audience know who you are. And the theme of today, the Grand African Renaissance, Africa Times Now, a roadmap to unity. What does that signify to you, especially being based in Jamaica?
First of all, family, I would like to say in the presence of the Most High, the great order of divinity, the Alpha and Omega, we bring you peace and goodwill. I am Ras Paulus Hoshing. I'm a representative of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, Charter 43, 6th region here in Jamaica, ex-Mecca. I'm also a representative of the National Council of Reparation. This is my 3rd term on this very important body here in Jamaica. And I'm also, as it relates to my faith is the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawahedo, the one that came down the Nile Valley and what was sent here by His Imperial Majesty. So it's indeed a wonderful opportunity for myself to be in this such a wonderful platform as it relates to African liberation, knowing that African liberation on the 25th of May, 1963, the founding fathers of the OAU chartered the courses that we're now celebrating without actually accomplishing. So when we talk about African liberation, we can only fulfill it when Africa is totally free of all external forces from any countries, so that we can now internally repair the evil that has been done through shackled slavery. So Africa unity, to me, it's not just a day of celebration. It has been a continuation from the time of shackled slavery to the declaration of the OAU for Africa to be one. So it is a way of life, because without Africa being one, the rest of humanity will perish eventually, family. So one can see the significance of this day to the true Africans as it relates to the true liberation of humanity. Is there anything else you wanted me to speak of, my friend?
No, that's fine. That's fine. It was just a brief introduction. And just to say, we do have another guest.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have another guest, Dr. Truth Bay. She was on the stream. She has fallen off. So she may be experiencing a bit of technical difficulty. As soon as she comes back, put her up. So, okay, that's fine. So now we're over the introduction. Let's get into the theme of the day. And let's start looking more closely at what's behind the theme and what is happening on the African continent. Now, to me, in order to realize some of the things that we have said about the Grand African Renaissance and its Africa Time Now and the roadmap to unity, one of the things that we have to look at closely is identity and mental liberation. So I'd like to put the question, are we over-romanticizing pre-colonial Africa? And does that hinder building of a practical modern future? And the reason I say that is that many times we watch many programs and stuff, and we go back to ancient Kemet, we go back to Great Songhai, we go back to Great Zimbabwe, and basically that's what we tend to be focused on. We were once great, we will be great again. But do you believe by doing that we are actually over romanticizing it and not spending more time focused on the practicalities? Anyone want to go first, Brother Glenroy?
Yeah, I don't think I would want to describe it as over romanticizing it. It's our history. We must retain that. It's our root. It is said a tree without root will not last. So we need our grounding. We need to understand, because so much is spent trying to undermine the fact that we had any history. That is some of the starting point for many of the atrocities and discrimination against African people. And this is why it's important to have and see a renaissance of what we are. So it's not over romanticizing. It's not that we are stuck in that place. We need to understand that we are not the people that they try to make us out to be. In saying that, clearly we must deal with what's going on now. And just simply relying on our history is something that we ought not to become over reliance on. I was part of a discussion today where somebody was saying about China has the Great Wall, rather than realize that I think the Somali Kingdom had a greater, a longer wall around its kingdom. But that's not to say it's in competition, but for people to completely dismiss that. When people talk about the university and forget about Timbuktu and other places that we've had, it doesn't mean we should be stuck in that place, because other great universities are being created and should be created. So I wouldn't say we are over romanticizing, but we mustn't forget our history. It is key to us knowing who we are, and for further generation to realize that we are not what imperialists would like us to be seen as.
Okay, and just before I go on, I think the wall you was referring to was the Great Wall of Benin.
Benin, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Not yeah.
So now, Brother Wandi Andy, the same to you, same question. Do you think to some extent, sometimes we are over romanticizing pre-colonial Africa? I stress pre-colonial Africa. And do you think that's hindering a practical modern future?
I would say not, because understanding your history is a root of things. As I said, a tree without root is cannot grow. So it's very important for us to look back also and to understand where we come from, but to not dwell on it, learn from it and try and find a solution to move forward, to make a great impact in the present, that we can open the doors for the future. So it's really important for us Africans to know where we come from, to know our history, but not attempt to dwell on it more.
Okay. And the same, Brother Russ Hosing, I mean, the same that, from a certain perspective, if you look at some of the coverage of Africa by many groups, they tend to be stuck within the pre-colonial Africa, like I'm saying, especially the ancient Kemet and what we achieved once time ago. So do you think that could actually sell us short in a way than just concentrating on where we are today and the practicalities and what we have to do to be great again. Yes, we can look back, but don't dwell there too long.
Without history of our past family, we wouldn't have known of what came against us. So as it relates to the papal doctrine of 1451, that Pope Nicholas gave the white man with white skin a religious authority of their rights of discovery and to claim everything under their sovereign that came from their church of the Vatican. So we must know that history, because when we've seen what has happened under the 500 years, you know, it is the gravest crime against humanity, because no other period of man fight against each other, but they integrated eventually to strengthen their own bloodline, their tribe. But the instance of the European, of what took place in 500 years, was the dehumanization of a man, taking his resources of his land, building his empire, and the labor and the invention, the innovation on this man, and felt that it was godly to do it. So the importance of history, family, it is very important, because without it, we would not be able to realize in the 21st century that His Imperial Majesty, the last emperor, not the king, as they want you to believe that he was coronated emperor of Ethiopia, but the last emperor on this earth, and his authority of what he did, both at the League of Nations and what he has chartered within the United Nations, and why the United Nations and the African Union are the most important institution for 21st century for all of humanity. And as for other African people, the OAU has been chartered. It's not just a club, a gathering. If you look into it, it was chartered for uninterference of internal development for Africa to organize together, and then to centralize with 53 different states of different countries with our armies. We were now able to have an internal security force chartered under a proper unity of the OAU family. And that is still the mission that must be accomplished. So history is like we here in the Caribbean. How many of you know that the Moors ruled all the Caribbean, the Americas, and now you all know Europe? We were the last Europe, the last empire. What preceded it? In 1451, the so-called Anglo-Saxon, and who helped them? The Mongol Empire coming from the east. They joined with the Christian Crusader and the Mongol Empire with one intention, one purpose, all against Mother Africa. One ruled the east and one rules the west.
Okay,
Communism and democracy. Two ideologies of the two beasts of the 21st century. History is important for me.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I agree. Now, another thing, in order to achieve the Grand African Renaissance, we're going to have to rely on good leadership and accountability. So I'll ask a question. Are African challenges primarily the result of external exploitation or internal leadership failures? Which carry more weight today, do you think?
Can I say that it's not to be achieved, the Grand Renaissance? It's an ongoing process. We are living it. We may not notice it but people are awaking to the reality that we are not this downtrodden people that people want us to be seen. But yes, our leadership is not up to par. That can't be denied. There's no way around it, because so many things we've seen has shown that they are not firing. Not all of them, of course, but too many are not firing on the full cylinder, because the relationship with the rest of Africa, i.e., those outside of Africa, has been too long in the making. It can't be that they have been unaware of the activity of Africans outside of Africa, and yet they're only now, by consensus, by the way, which means that nobody really votes for it, but quietly allow it to go through, that we finally acknowledge the sixth region. And it isn't a proper process. I say that because last year there was supposed to be an election for the sixth region. You may have been aware of that. And the African Union, through ECOSOC, one of its vehicles in the AU, gave a commitment that they have overcome all the legal barriers and that there would be election for seats from the six regions to sit in the African Union this year. Now, I don't know what calendar they're using, but we're almost in the 6 months of the year, halfway through, and I've heard no plans about elections, no plans about how the regional structure will be represented. I am here in Zanzibar. I hope to be part of the process here. But the reality is those Africans outside of the continent are going to be let down again, in my opinion. Now, there's 6 months to go, may very well do something to come. But the fact that we have leadership that are so slow on these matters that are important to the whole of the continent is worrying, and that's an internal issue. We have to actually do better. The situation being celebrated about the motion from the African Union, it wasn't just Ghana, around reparation in the UN. Yes, it should be celebrated, but why has it taken so long? Have Africans not been demanding reparation much before that? So why now? The Rastafarian have put in their time, have made sure reparation and repatriation is on the agenda. The motion to the UN, as far as I saw, made no reference to repatriation. So our leaders internally are letting us down. We need some radical upgrade internally.
Don't worry, I've got some special
okay.
questions relating to reparation for later anyway, so that we'll be focusing on that a bit more. So, brother Wandi Pendi, the same to you in terms of leadership and accountability. I mean, you're from Burkina Faso and the AES states as a whole. I think if we're looking for leadership, there you are. They're providing it, where the rest of Africa has to sit up and take notice. So overall, the question is, are African challenges primarily the result of external exploitation or internal leadership failure? Which carries more weight today?
Yeah, I would say both of them carry a weight, but Africa also have been under corrupt leadership for so many years. We had great leaders. We can salute, the work of Thomas Sankara, Patrick Lumumba. There's so many forefathers that we can salute today for the great work they have done. But we have also been under puppet leaders, actually, who have sold out the continent to European powers, and that's been also the great struggle of Africa for so long. So I think like leadership accountability is something that most leaders must take. So talking about that today, we can see that with the IAS today, with a strong leadership in place, we can see the progress taking places. We can see the improvement taking places, and sometimes that's what the young people are, the youth of Africa are ready, and they're ready to take the stand. They're ready to take leadership role. They just need a stronger leader to actually show them the way and lead them to where they want to be. And so far in most places we had weak leaders who are not able to actually defend the people, but are more robbing and stealing from their own people. So I think we can exploitation have played a role, but it wasn't our exploitation alone, but it's under the leadership that let others pave the way for others to come in and exploit the continent.
Okay, that's fine. Brother Russ Hosing.
Grand Rising again, family.
Okay. Yes.
Africa.
So again, the same question to you in terms of leadership and accountability.
Africa has never been short.
We can stretch it to Africa. I was going to say to you as well, because as a Pan-Africanist, I see the Caribbean as an extension of Africa. So in your answer, I'd also like you to touch and say Caribbean leadership. Do you think that is serving the people well? Or do you think it's overall they're failing the people?
You see, family, since 1451, the rights of discovery has created a most draconian evil system that has governed Africa. And that has been the problem, family. So our problem is not internal. It has always been external. Africa is not short of great leaders. But when your leaders are being assassinated, being incarcerated, and all the things that we have witnessed and seen, and when our country's malicious group is being paid to come in and murder our people and create mayhem so that they can get access to the gold and the diamond, that has been the problem, family. We're not short of great leaders. Yes, under this evil system, our leaders have become corrupted. That is why all of them, their bank account is in Europe, included leaders of the Caribbean. So do not think that the Caribbean do not suffer from this draconian system of the papal doctrine that exists amongst us as a democratical process, but maintain the injustices against our own people, that we are still second-class, third-class citizens in the land of our ancestors. So just as our His Majesty, when we address the Africans, the position that we are today, family, it's real. Africa has been reborn as a free continent, and Africans have been reborn as free men. The blood that was shed and the sufferings that were endured are today's Africa advocates for freedom and unity. The glories and advantages of freedom cannot be purchased with all the world's material wealth. The OAU is not just an ordinary organization, family. The charter of it that was founded by the 36th state that was independent was the foundation of the African unity. The seeds have been sown, and we're now seeing it in Abraham Toure, the young presidents of Burkina Faso. What he's doing is a fulfillment of the OAU, the African Union. What Abraham Toure should now do is call an emergency meeting under the African Union Charter concerning the xenophobia that is happening in South Africa under our own security forces of a unilaterally gathering of all states of Africa, including Ethiopia, that has never been conquered or colonized and has been training Africa liberators during the time of His Imperial Majesty.
Yes, my brother. Okay.
That's the position.
So we
Can
will
I
be
just,
touching more on South Africa and Sudan and so forth a bit later,
can I
because
just,
that's something to be highlighted. Yes, Brother Glenroy.
yeah, I hear you, Russ, Osei, but you know, we need a scorecard on some of our failures internally. And I agree with you, Chair, that when we talk about Africa, we must include outside those nations outside of the continent that are actually African. But we really need a scorecard on the behavior and the conduct of many of our leaders. Because when we think of people like Ruto, when we think of money that apparently he's been given or loans that he's taken, and there has been no improvement in the infrastructure in Kenya, we have a situation in East Africa that needs some attention. And we have to challenge what we see. Yes, there is always external interference. And we know, for example,
Brother Glenroy,
if I could just finish, Comrade
Yeah,
Keane,
that's
UAE are very much involved in the situation going on in Sudan. And we have understanding that they're interfering in things here in Tanzania. So we know there are external pressure, but we really need to ask the people in position now to buck up their position, because they are letting us down. And the story is that the outside mouse comes in with the aid of the internal mouse. So there are people here that are letting us down, and we need to be very clear on that. But yes, there is
all right.
internal interference as well.
Yeah. Well, your point leads us into the next question, which covers a lot of
to the
what
chair, before you go to the next question,
you'll be saying.
because
Now,
you
the next
did, I
question
just,
is actually tied up with the last question. So, in answer to the next question, you should be able to amplify a lot of what you were saying, because the next question is now looking at economic sovereignty. You know, because in order to achieve any renaissance, if we do not control our own economies, then it's a pipe dream. So the question is, can Africa truly be free while relying on Western or Eastern financial systems and institutions? Or is a total disengagement unrealistic?
can I take that?
Yeah, you can take that, yeah.
Africa can be totally free. Africa doesn't need neither the West or the East, neither communism or democracy. Africa has everything internally. Africa only wants non-interferences of foreigners that has been completely undermining Africa's development. We do have to get rid of the European. We're not racist, but he can no longer be at the table when it starts of Africa unity. So as it relates to Africa, this is why the OAU was chartered. For Africans alone, not for external. This is why the Federation, the Ethiopian World Federation, was sent for we the black people, not the Indian, the Chinese, European, or anyone, we the black peoples. So we have everything, family. We don't need no one. The world needs Africa. And as it relates to the gravest crime against humanity, the United Nations Human Rights Charter, all African states must now have it, invoke the international human rights as their basic laws of every state. That is what it is. This is what everyone is doing.
Yeah. I want to stay on track because we're looking at the economic strategy. So in terms of economic strategy, like
the economic strategy is very simple, family. Africa has all the resources Africa has all the intellectual capabilities. Africa has everything. So our development is in our hands, just as how Abraham Toure is showing the rest of the African leaders what he has accomplished in just 2.5 years, 3 years.
Okay. So I'd like to go over now to Brother Wande Pendi and ask you the same thing. And to add, as Ras Hoshin said, Africa has all the resources we need. Now, additionally, with the resources, we have all the resources, but do Africa has the technical know-how at the moment to exploit said resources under its feet?
Yeah. Well, before I say that, there's the elder who told me that, the renaissance of Africa will happen when the two brains of Africa are connected. When he said two brain of Africa, I asked him what's the two brain of Africa, and he said there's one brain at home and there's one brain outside, which is the diaspora. So when the two brain are actually connected, we'll be able to actually be free, liberate ourselves freely, because the ones who are abroad and outside have actually acquire knowledge and technical skills that they can bring back into the continent, and they can train the others there, and we can unite those two forces together and come to liberation. We will not be there wouldn't be a renaissance without the vision of a strong, united, prosperous, and self-reliance Africa. So we need to actually learn to rely on ourselves, not look on outsider to come and help us. Thomas Sankara from Burkina Faso used to say that the hand that feed you will be the hand that dictate you. So we shouldn't be looking with all the resources and all the brain we have in Africa. We shouldn't be looking into Westerners or other countries. We should be working to collaborate and unite between African countries, so we can actually work to our freedom and liberation. That's what I wanted to add.
Okay. So now, Brother Glenroy, your take, the same question in terms of economic sovereignty. As we have ascertained, Africa has all the resources it needs. Now, in order to exploit those resources and drive Africa forward, do we have what it takes?
Osaje Foz was right then, and it is right now. His words are right now, that we should not be looking east or west, we should be looking forward. The reality is that neo-colonialists who have a seaport would much rather look outside of the continent for its export, etc., when on the continent, trading among ourselves would be much easier and much more productive. So again, yes, we have all that we need. They are coming in to steal what we have. But the reality is that we have a lot of blockage. Congo is one of the richest area on the continent. And yet, the way in which its mineral wealth is being distributed, for want of a better word, is for other people to come in and steal it. People haven't really connected that Donald Trump so-called arrangement. While people are still dying in Congo, they're still stealing the mineral, as they have been doing.
I just like to interject there, Glenroy, and says, so what do you think then of the African free trade zone, or the African free trade market that's been attempted? I mean, I'll give an example. I was listening to Don Goldtree the other day, and he was putting forward just how difficult it was to trade across borders. Even though, take ECOWAS, for example, once you have a passport of any ECOWAS nation, you're supposed to be able to travel with ease, and that wasn't the case. So how do you think? So don't you think in a way that we're sabotaging ourselves by putting forward ideas which we are not implementing?
Precisely, because Don Cote is playing a very strange game. I don't know if you know that he had agreed to build a refinery here in Tanzania. And then suddenly, for some mysterious reason, he has decided to do it in Kenya. And whilst at the same time, Kenya is looking at nuclear energy. Yeah? Now, what is Macron doing in Kenya? What was his intention? What did he bring for people like Ruto? And what has Dangote done with this idea that instead of Tanzania, and I don't know the rationale for Tanzania, I don't know the reason why he was going to do that, or indeed whether we now do not have a refinery in Tanzania. But again, the reality is, are we exporting and supporting each other on the continent, or are we looking for cash crops? Because that is still a kind of thing that comes on, whether it's cash crop through minerals or whether it's cash crop through actual crops. We've got to really recognize this, because there are places here where they're growing flowers for Europe. Yeah? We're not about
on
that.
the best land and the most fertile agricultural land is used to grow flowers.
So we have the land, we have the opportunity, but we need to organize of how we export to each other first and foremost. We can do surplus. Europe is famous for their surplus. America is famous for dumping their surplus on us. We maybe should dump some on them. But we really have to think internally first. And I think that's a missing equation. Now, yes, freedom of movement is very much a key part of it, so that our technicians can go and work in the right place, etc., etc. And yes, I think that if Africans outside want to come to Africa to help and build up and had their skills, but one of the things I must say is we should not be begging them to come. If they are not aware of their responsibility and the opportunity to contribute to the African Renaissance, then let's leave them where they are, because they may have another agenda. So people who want to be here should be encouraged to be here. And people don't have to be here all the time. If there is an issue about families and friends back in the West and so on. But if this Renaissance is to continue, it must be in a practical way where people are investing their time, their effort into the continent. Pick a place and go there and be part of that development.
Okay, well, that leads us nicely into the next question, which is looking at Pan-Africanism, I put it, versus nationalism. And the question is, should Africa pursue a United States of Africa, or is that vision impractical given current political realities? So, Russ Hossin, you'd like to take up that one?
Remember, before the Berlin Conference, Africans, Abyssinia, Hosanna was one. So when you say to me, can it be? Of course it can, because it was one in the beginning. This is why the OAU, ones keep on talking and criticizing. Yes, it has been corrupted. It hasn't fulfilled, but the vision doesn't change, and changing the name and replacing it, the vision of Africa unity still remains to be accomplished, family. And this is where we are. So we have a system which has been dysfunctioning, which means that it has now given us the opportunity to make it function as it was chartered to do on the 25th of May, 1963. That's what this is. And as it relates to, as you were saying, the sixth region, the sixth region is very much important to unity of the continent. because the sixth region is West Africa, north of the equator. We are not on the same tectonic plate as the Western Americas, north and south. We are on the same plate as Africa. So when we have His Majesty came and visited in 66 and we confirmed the length and of our empire to the islands of the West Africa here in the Caribbean, this is what we're now focusing in as it relates to liberation of our economy. The Central Bank of Africa must not value gold, diamond, or oil. His Majesty told them, you must invest in agriculture, natural food, natural water, and natural energy. Gold, diamond, and oil is run by the Arabs and America, and the other is run by the Jacolian Jews. So long as you keep on putting value to it, remember, they have to mine it, destroy the planet to get it. So central banking of Africa, we don't value gold, diamond, or oil. It's a new revolutionary based upon the natural environment and the security of our race family. And this is a position. Think about it.
So, okay, yeah, that's true. So I'd like to go on to Brother Juan Payandi. Pan-Africanism or nationalism? Now, say you're from Burkina Faso. Just explain to me on the ground level, you know, the masses of people, how important you can say is Pan-Africanism? Is it a daily thinking? Is it something that people discuss on a regular basis or think about? Or would you say at the moment they're more focused on a national picture?
Yeah, I think Pan-Africanism is something that is been spoken, especially among the youth. If you go to universities, you got different organizations, Pan-African movement in the university, and I will say that the revolution of Burkina Faso actually was contributed by the young Pan-Africanists of Burkina Faso, because they were able also to enlighten other people who wasn't aware of the situation, and it's like each one teach one. So it means they were able to prepare the young generation into taking action and taking their destiny in their hand, and disposing the president that was there for 27 years, so Blaise Compaoré, and through that revolution came the birth of Captain Ibrahim Traoré that we see today. So I would say Burkina Faso is strongly Pan-Africanist, and that spirit of Pan-Africanism actually was installed to Thomas Sankara, and the time of the Thomas Sankara, Pan-Africanism and the ideology of the revolution was taught to children at school from young age. So the older generation was able to benefit through this education of Pan-Africanism, and a lot of them have been able to pass that on to the younger generation.
Okay, thanks for that. So, Brother Glenroy, so Pan-Africanism versus nationalism. In Tanzania, I don't know how much you get to interact with the younger generation, the youth, or with the general populace, on the whole. And would you say from your reaction, from your interaction, Pan-Africanism is foremost in the mind of the masses?
Not from my experience so far. I think there are people here, largely people who are returning home, are very much here because of their Pan-African aspiration. But we do need to reach out. I'm trying to reach out to the political activists here to engage more in that. But at the moment, I will not say that there is that strong view around Pan-Africanism. But I have two maps on my wall in front of me here. One is a massive map of Africa. As you know, they drew the map of Africa in a reduced size. I had one of these while I was living in London, and I saw somebody on the street selling these, so I quickly stopped the car and bought one. But I also have another small one that I name map PBC, Post-Berlin Conference. Now we talk about nationality. If we're talking about nationality based on their maps and their decision about where our borders and boundaries are, then no one should be considering nationalism. I know people do, because many times when you talk to people on the continent, they tell you they're Congolese or they're Zimbabwean or whatever. For me, I'm an African that happens to live in Zanzibar. And it is something that I really want to engage people in. You know, what comes first? Your Pan-Africanism, you're pro-African, because Pan-Africanism is about being pro-African. That should be the first thing in your recognition of who you are. But it will take time. It's generation, as Comrade has said, it is about a generational shift, you know, but I don't think it's insurmountable, because what we have been forced to do in regard to nationality is an imposition. Now, I have seen other maps of various regional structure that existed before the Berlin Conference. But to try and go to current leaders here and say, that's actually what it should look like, not this, is a problem. But it's a problem we must tackle, because nationalism is a means by which they keep us divided. Mapungu, I did a thing the other day, I think about Tanzania and Kenya. Was it Tanzania? I think Uganda and Tanzania. And I did the same thing when I was up in the lake, Great Lake, not bloody Lake Victoria, where from that region you are on the borders of Uganda and other countries, that you can step over the border and be in another of these countries. We mustn't recognize them. We must work to say, and I supported to many extent the regional structure of North, South, Central, and obviously the sixth region. But that should have been a stepping stone towards unification. And can I say, I really hate that name, comrade. United States of Africa, USA. I'm sorry, we're going to have to find better. Yeah, we're going to have to find better. We're not copying the imperialists. We should never be using that word. And I've heard it being embraced by so many people. I hope somebody come up with something else. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, that brings us nicely onto the next question. You mentioned the diaspora earlier, and I said I'll come back to it. Now, we have Africans on the continent, and to a large extent, African in the diaspora. So my question is, do Africans on the continent as a whole and those in the diaspora truly share aligned interests, or are there unspoken divisions that needs confronting? Russ Hosing.
Family, as it relates to the sixth region, as you know, before 1451, the Moors, the Black Empire, ruled all the Americas into Europe. So as it relates to repatriation, Repatriation is our people that was brought into chattel slavery in the last 500 years. And these ones, they have it in their blood. They will return naturally to the land that they were taken from without any problems. There's many in the Western Hemisphere whose ancestors has been here for hundreds of thousands of years. So there's no repatriation. So we to clarify it in the 21st century, and knowing that it's not all of the melanated people will repatriate. It will be the ones of the 500 years of chattel slavery. They have the right. This is why 1960, when the university did the research amongst the Rastafarian, repatriation and reparation was fully understood from back then. That is why the 1961 mission from Jamaica was sent officially by the government concerning the rights of our return to various different states of prominence of Africa, which included Ghana and Nigeria, and also, as you know, Ethiopia. So that was already determined a long time ago, family. As for we, I consider myself, not even consider.
Okay, I'll be back in 1 second.
I'm an Ethiopian, not by birth, by blood. I am birthed on this island, this rock, West Africa, known as ex-Mecca, in the beginning, Jamaica, since the European came in. Well, I've never considered myself as a Jamaican because under Jamaica, it's a captured colony of the British, both the Spanish and the French, and finally the British. So I've never seen myself as a Jamaican for some reason. So I've always considered myself, as I said, as an Ethiopian. And as an Ethiopian, we have maintained our philosophy and teaching because we were never colonized. We were never subjugated. And as it relates to religion, which is so important to all of humanity, we have always presented the fullness of the one. And that brought in all the different interpretations. So we maintain a divine sovereign authority that was reconfirmed here in 1966 of the visit of His Imperial Majesty when he declared both in Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and most definitely Jamaica, the authority and to reclaim the islands. So it becomes the model for Africa development, economical liberation, because we have everything, family. The intertrade of Africa is now happening between Africa and the 6th region. We're going to have permanent flights now coming in from the African continent regularly. So we are now integrating all the unilateral agreement that has always been chartered but never been fulfilled, fire. This is happening and you cannot stop it. This is
Right.
what African liberation is all about. The chartering of
what
African
liberation is
unity.
all
This is
about.
what it all
Yes.
signifies, family. It's not something that we celebrate each year and then every year we come back celebrating the same thing when we are not liberated.
Okay.
We must celebrate this when we are finally, and it will happen finally. And I will give you the simple solution to accomplish it immediately. As it relates to South Africa, when you go into that segment of the
Yeah, we're going to
xenophobia
go
that
into
is
that
happening.
segment. So what I like to do now is go to Brother Wen Payandi and ask him the same question in terms of Africans on the continent and those in the diaspora having aligned interests. Now, since you have been out of the continent and your interaction with the diaspora as a whole, what have you found? Have you found that most of the diaspora you meet has a mind that's taking them to Africa or see Africa in a positive light? Or do you find sometimes they are now reached the point when they say, yes, my ancestors probably came from Africa, but right now I've evolved into something else?
Yeah, I've experimented both sides. I think I have met Africans who are actually, pro-Africa. When you talk to them, they actually admit and recognize that they're actually from Africa, and they want to go back to Africa and to see and to learn the culture. So it's people who are like open-minded and actually are ready to pursue those journeys. I took a trip actually with some of my brothers from the Caribbean last year to Burkina Faso, 19 of us. So this was people who was there, open-minded, ready to learn and embrace the culture. But then there also from the group, you had people also who was close-minded, who wasn't ready for this trip, who wasn't open to receive, what there was about, because for them the trip was more something that they're expecting it to be, see the European standard, uh, so I experienced it both ways. So there's others who are ready, who are well prepared, but there's others from the diaspora also that I met who are actually still traumatized uh, to here, and the reaction to Africa is no, 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 no. Anything African is no, 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 no. I'm black, but I'm not African, and so I have experienced it both different people
Okay,
over
that's
here.
interesting.
But the most conscious people will actually accept and embrace the continent that
Okay.
it is. Okay.
So, Brother Glenroy, as somebody now residing in Tanzania, you have definitely seen it on both sides, and you have also contact with the Caribbean. So the same question to you: do you think the diaspora's outlook on, in general, and those on the continent are in alignment?
I think there are issues. There are a number of issues. And I think that we're going to have to face up to some of them. I think one of the things is that I support everybody's and anybody's right, especially an African, to go anywhere on this planet that he or she wants to. Now, many of us have said it. I've heard people say, oh, we should discourage Africans from coming to Europe, to the West, the racism, etc., etc. And those are people who are living in the West with the racism. So that's not the solution. If that is the issue, and it is an issue, then what we need is for us to band together to link up with new visitors who not only from the continent, but also from the Caribbean and other places like that are coming to the Europe, UK with a view, a romantic view to some degree, that somehow those things that they hear don't apply to them. Yeah, I mean, you had recent racist march in London, and many Africans and other so-called ethnic minority were on those march with their
Stunning,
flags and what have you.
incredible.
But some of the issues that I think we need to face up to is one which is very thorny, and people will bring it up, is about enslavement and the role of some of our own people on the continent that played in it. And what we've had, for example, and I don't know if people are aware of this, there was a young lady who was in the Green Party, I think, who there made a claim, which may be true or may not be true, that her ancestors were involved in enslavement, an African woman. Now, whether that's about her ancestor from interference or external marriages and so on, it's not very clear. But she couldn't answer the question, probably because she has no direct information about it. And this is going to come up again and again. And some would use it against us, even among ourselves. So we really need to address that. Who do we know? What is the role of, for example, the royal lineage in certain part of the continent? What were their role in this process? Now, we cannot simply be saying that it's only the Arabs and the Europeans who were involved in this. We know that they brutalized our people, raided village and forced them to fight, selling arms to both sides. And so we know of the stories that created that situation, but we need to address that before others come and try and tell us what it's about. So that's another thorny issue. The other one, I think, I just put that on the table. We talk about repatriation. We've talked about repatriation throughout my life, because I come from a family who were very clear that we're going to go home. But when we go home, we need to make preparation. We need to be sure that we prepare to integrate in a way that brings us back to our spirituality on the continent. Now, if we have a community that wants to go to Europe, want to relocate, repatriate in reverse to go to Europe, and we're not able to say why it is that African like me wants to come home, then we have a battle to fight. Because when I've spoken to other people and say there are people who want to come home, there are people living in England and America who want to come home, I've been asked why. Why do they want to? So there is a gap, and we need to mend that, because we need Africans all over the globe to have an interest in Africa. Doesn't mean we all have to repatriate. It doesn't mean that we all have to physically repatriate. There are many forms of repatriation, in the form of coming here, be on holiday here, investing here, and living here. But I think we've not overcome that barrier, because people are still going to the south of France, Disneyland, and whatever, when we have better beaches and better facilities here in Zanzibar, and I've traveled the continent. Many of our resources and beaches are better than what the Americans and others are providing. Now, of course, we have to face up to the involvement of Western thieves who continue to own our hotels, and even now we're trying to own our beaches, but that's another story to that.
Okay.
But we really need to overcome those issues, I think.
Now, to stress the question out a bit further, then, you've touched on a few points. So how do you think, what's the most effective way, do you think, of bringing around people who are skeptical of the continent, obviously via the press that they have consumed, via the books that they have read, and so forth? And just give me a few ideas you think that can be used to truly and really and truly bring them round, and also at the same time, as you said, saying to them, is you going back home and reconnecting. So yes, it's not you going back home, bringing the Western mentality in you to try and force it up on those on the continent. Is you readapting to what was always there. Give me some ideas how that could be more effectively done.
We need the people who have done it successfully to speak out more about it, because I'm not the first person to do that. There are many people here, but are they keeping it to themselves? Are they sharing that information? You hear a lot of horror stories about how it's gone wrong, or how I didn't get this house, or how I didn't get this land, or I bought this land and somebody tell me they own the land, and all of these horror stories. Yeah, and these happen. They do happen, because they're all some dishonest people wherever we go. However, the reality is it's no more dishonest than in other parts of the world. So put that aside and say what it is that you want And if you want to be part of the African experience, you want to return home, then be prepared for the challenges. Because like any other location, if you move from one part of this country to another, there are challenges. But what is your dominant spirit about being home? Is that overriding to some of the challenges that you will face? I resent having to apply for a resident permit. I'm not a resident. I've come home. If I have to have papers that says this is who you are, it should say an African who is returning home. Now, we're not going to get that. Our next aim and objective is obviously an African identity, an African passport, a documentation to say we are come home. And I go back again. I know we're probably going to touch on it later on. The UN motion that came from the African Union did nothing about Africans coming home, did nothing about repatriation. If they're talking about enslavement, then repatriation must go hand in hand with that. I don't want individual little countries here and then saying, oh yeah, we want to welcome Africans from the sixth region. There must be a continental view on our right to return. But we're working on it. We're going to get there. So that's one of the barriers that I think has to be overcome. And we need to talk to local people, wherever you are on the continent. Let's have that discussion. Let's have that talk. And wherever people are in the diaspora, let's have that talk. Because there are these barriers. You know, I appreciate what you're saying, comrades, about some of the people you meet and the way some who have probably never, ever been on the continent are saying, oh, well, and I don't want to be there. Those stories are still there and are still putting our people off. I would say this enslavers put that in their mind and it's lived there for generations. Don't go back to Africa.
That's true.
I mean, add to that, but I'm not.
I've heard many of them says that. Don't go back to Africa; you'll never survive there.
Yeah,
you know. So I like to
think you come back to take their land.
Yeah, I like to touch on expand it to Brother Juan Piandi in terms of the AES country. Is there any initiative within those countries to look favorable upon the African diaspora returning to Africa?
Yes, there's been initiative taken places. I think it's to an organization already called ADDI called ADDI, who have actually started a progress. At the moment, it's only on a residency level, but I think the government now are they're just being cautious because they don't really know who's coming to the country and who they're welcoming into the country. So it's kind of like welcoming the few that is already there, and I think to observe what they're doing and see what they're doing. And I think if that's positive, they're in talk at the moment on favoring and letting giving giving citizenship to the diaspora. And obviously that's not something that is done in one day. There's bureaucracy. So I'm sure they're discussing on that to with the ministers. So, and I'm sure something will come very soon in favorable to the diaspora. But that's also will depend on how we do it. I overheard the story last time when I was there. With this opportunity already open for the diaspora to be there, there's some of our brothers who are already jumped in there and trying to make it a business way and trying to press it and open it to make business to it. So if it's getting out of hand, then it might be quickly shut down. So it's us collaborating with the authority and reassuring them that we are actually coming with good intention. We are coming here because we want to come home. And when there's that reassurance there, I think all the diasporas are welcome back to Africa. You know, it's their home, and they should be able to come home whenever they want to, not like as a, you know, not looking for like citizenship or thing to come home. But as we all know, in any country you want to go in the world at the moment, there's bureaucracy that is put in place, and it's up to us, the diaspora, to actually work together to pave the way that we can achieve these things for the future.
Okay, that's good. Now that brings us nicely into the next question that I'd like to ask. And now we're looking at culture and knowledge systems. Now, in order to truly integrate into Africa and realize this renaissance, we have to look at, you know, languages. So is the continued dominance of European languages in Africa a practical necessity or a barrier to true liberation? Russ Housing.
Wherever there is language, family, we create all languages. Language is not a barrier in the 21st century. So that is not an excuse. And as it relates to our unity, family, as we said, the sixth region cannot be determined by the African. It is only we in the sixth region can determine the way forward as it relates to the unity of CARICOM, north of the equator, as it relates to the divinity and the sovereignty of His Imperial Majesty's authority. Only we can determine it. This is why the sixth region election, although it has been mentioned, it cannot be fulfilled until when we in the sixth region declare the full strategy of Africa unity, which is happening as we speak. The sixth region has been fully integrated with Africa. The amount of meetings and conferences that has been held here, family, as it relates to repatriation, reparation, Jamaica has been the country leading it by having a governmental unanimous decision to pursue it. And we have charted it, family. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. These things is done is for us, family, to put away our little pettiness.
No, but what I'm trying to home in on is this. At the sixth Pan-African Congress, I think it was the fifth Pan-African Congress, is 1974 in Dar es Salaam, out of which the Pan-African Congress movement was formed. It was recognized that in order for Africa to really elevate itself, it needs to be using an African language for its administrative purposes. And at that conference, maybe because it was held in Tanzania, Kiswahili was identified as a unifying language for Africa. If we look at Africa now, you got your Francophone, French is the dominant administrative language. Anglophone, English. We get in the north, Arabic. And we get the Portuguese ex-colonies, Portuguese is such. Apart from Ethiopia, that's using its native language for that purpose, where else in Africa is an indigenous language being used for such purposes? And if an indigenous language is not used, do you think Africa can truly realize a renaissance? Because you think in English, and by the process of thinking in English or French or Portuguese, you automatically take on some of their traits. I'm sure somebody that purely thinks in Yoruba or Igbo or Mosi or Swahili, their outlook on life is different. So that's what I'm getting on. Do you think without a situation like that, Africa can truly realize a renaissance?
The renaissance of Africa already happening from the 25th of May, 1963. The different languages is not a barrier, family. People keep on using languages as a barrier when the common genocide, we all suffered it. So it's not languages.
I would like to comment there again.
Mhm.
When we saw the expansion of the Europeans, for example, wherever they went, they make sure their language was entrenched. They did not adopt the local languages. They laid down their languages and forced the population to learn their languages because they know with language come power. So that's what I think we are losing out in Africa. All the African languages have been relegated to the dustbin.
But
And
remember,
European language
family,
has been put on a pedestal.
yeah, the European language of the slave master became the universal language of commerce, family. That's
why
what it
they
is.
dominate commerce.
English,
That's why they still dominate
right.
commerce.
And we must remember the system that continued to maintain it. Right now in Jamaica, our system is the same system as England. Our government, if you look in it, is the same as your Westminster, the same everything.
Prince
The
Charles is
same
still the head of
foolishness.
state. The Privy Council is still the
This-
highest court in the land.
As we said, same
is
thing, same system. And it is now time, family, to permanently discredit and abandon, because we don't need democracy. Its philosophy and ideologies is too corrupted, just as we have seen and witnessed from 1451. And as the religion of European, we know it came from us, but the way they've used it to subjugate and to genocide races under the Vatican, you know, these are things that we're fully cognizant of, family. Languages is not a problem to African unity. What is the problem is the fact that the west of the world, both China and the Mongolian Empire that rules China today, Russia, China, India, and all what you call United Emirates State, is the Mongolian. The rest is the European, Anglo-Saxon, the so-called Knight Christian Crusaders family.
Okay, I'd like
That's
to
the
pass
system.
over to Brother Glenroy now. Living in Tanzania, I don't know how much Kiswahili you've picked up so far. But do you agree that in order for Africa to reach that zenith, indigenous languages needs to take precedence?
Well, according to Kwesi Pra, there are 5 indigenous languages. There are thousands of dialects that are branches off from that. Now, I don't know the scientific explanation. I don't know whether it's true or not. But I have had some worrying experience. I am determined to learn Swahili as much as I can, but my old brain perhaps is not taking it as well as I should do. My wife is doing much better at Swahili than I am. And, and the reality is that we've tried to link up with a school here, and perfectly pleasantry, going to meet the staff and children, speaking to the children. And on our way out, we saw a rather faded sign, could just about make it out, that says, at school, you must only speak Arabic or English. Swahili must not be spoken. Now, how do you administer something like that? Children in the playground, what do they decide? One is speaking Arabic, one is speaking. How does that work? It was faded, I suspect, because no one would line it up or whatever. I don't know the situation, and we were leaving the school, so I didn't go back to question them. But we have to have a common language. I think it's going to be problematic because the teaching of English, when I saw that and think, okay, I'm learning Swahili, but I'm able to speak English. So does that mean I've got an advantage? And I love being able to communicate with people and trying to speak Swahili. But when the struggles start and they have some English, and of course you happily fall into that. But as you say, our thinking will be governed by that. We have to be disciplined about it and try very hard to recognize the miseducation that we've had in the West. Now, I don't have the solution to it, but I agree with Rosso that we shouldn't make the language the barrier. We should find a way to overcome it, that we all try to communicate. But here we are. What modes of communication are we using? We're using English.
Mhm.
Many of our
And just
communication.
before I go to Brother
But-
when the Pandi,
but-
I'd like to say this. Do you think the British Empire would have reached the height it did if it didn't insist that English was spoken in all its territories and used
No.
as the administrative language? Precisely.
I agree.
But
I
they
agree.
recognize
And-
the fundamental,
yeah,
how
I-
crucial that is to hold power.
It is also, as Ross has said, about the parliamentary thing. You know, I've heard them say England is the mother of all parliament or some nonsense of that nature. But did we used to communicate before they imposed this sort of system? Are we trying to actively find alternative? Because I agree with Ross. Democracy doesn't work for us. But we're not
But just before I
prepared.
hand over to the brother, I'd like to say, before parliaments and so forth was imposed on us, a system existed.
Yes, yes.
And
we're
it worked.
acting as if we
And it worked
acting-
very well.
and we're acting as if it didn't.
Precisely.
We're self-deluded in ourselves that this is some. You know, when what was I? I think I was in. I think I was in Kenya on the day that the court was reassembling, and they were all wearing these wigs and gown in a hot climate. You remind me of when the ANC met with the Boers in I can't remember where, with all the Boers wearing khaki shorts and shirt, and the ANC comrades were in three-piece suit and tie in a hot weather. You know, something has gone wrong, and we have to reassess it. We have to relook at it, but we have to recognize that unless we start now to ensure that our children are actually getting to grips with one of our language on the continent. And I know we'll get a big argument when we say Swahili, because people say tree or this and whatever. Well, people do. For a long time, the Pan-Africanist Congress, I think, says that Swahili should be our aim and objective. I think perhaps the African Union also says that, but it's not being
because
implemented.
it came out of the Fifth Pan-African Congress.
As a Bantu language, and many regions here in East Africa do speak Swahili. And we need to make that a modus operandi. When I go to the bank to use the cash till, and it gives you the option of English or Swahili, I press Swahili, even though I don't understand all of this. You've got to get into it.
Force you to learn his name. Okay, moving on to Brother Wendy Handy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think the AES countries were moving to phase out French and reintroduce indigenous languages. Is that the case?
It's cool. Yeah, that's the case. So before I get into that, I would say languages, I don't see it as a barrier. As myself, I speak 4 different languages. And I feel like this.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm coming to it. And I feel like, it allow you to, have different conversation with different people from different countries. And, even some African brothers that I will meet in different places, it's sad, but because the only, we can be able to have a conversation in different languages. But I will say that, is essential and is essential for Africa to use African languages in educational places now. And I think that's what the EAS is doing now. It was spoken by Sheikh Anta Diop a long time ago, and I think Africa is finally coming to it, especially with the AAS country that's putting African local languages as the main education systems. Like French language will be used as working language now. It will not be the main language that we study on. And I think that's a benefit for the African youth, because if you imagine a child born 7 years old, you already know most things in your environment in your own languages. And then from then you have got to go back and sit in school and start learning A, B, C, D or A, B, C, D. So I think it's kind of, putting us back. But language is a tool also for us to utilize. So if we are able to learn them, then they're welcome. But we should focus on African language. And I agree with the elder Glenn Rove, but about having a common African language. But saying that also there is Swahili is a mix of Arabic languages. So would we want to go, run away from one language and run again to another imported cultural language to us? Or do we want to actually study the different African languages to find the proper root African language that is actually proper to us, that we can embrace together and move? But I like the idea of having a common language that will allow trade, a route between African countries, and also we'll be able to communicate, not like meet a brother from Congo and the only language I can speak to him is in French. So that doesn't make sense.
That's it. No, because that was my point. Like you just said, you meet a brother from Congo. As you know, Lingala, Kikongo, such and such is spoken in the Congo. But for the administrative purposes, it's going to be French. For the administrative purpose in Kenya, it's going to be English. And that's the crux of the matter. If that was in an African language, I'm not saying you shouldn't learn as many languages as you can, European or Asian or whatever, but the core of the administrative work in any country should be in its own languages. Okay. Next question, I'll move on to the next question. That brings us nicely in after the dose of language. And we're now looking at power and global strategy. And the question is, should Africa align with emerging global powers, for example, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, to encounter Western dominance? Or does this risk new dependencies and thus take us further away from Pan-Africanism? Again, anybody, Glenroy, want to start off?
Yeah, I don't mind. To be quite honest, BRICS has a number of problems. First of all, not all the African nations are lining up to be part of it. And that will be a problem.
Well, BRICS is one example. There could be others.
Well, that's the main one that's around.
Yeah, that's the
I
main
think
one.
Bitcoin and what have you are not in that range. But the ability or the protection that is likely to be provided with BRICS is obviously much better than what Gaddafi tried. Whilst that was admirable and correct, it was clear that it opened up individual nations to the kind of treatment that NATO provided, and it will happen to others. Now, BRICS, I have a suspicion that it's not going to be allowed to survive. It's not going to be allowed to be what it's supposed to be. I don't hear of what the protections are that they're putting in place. And there's some very strange players, to be quite honest. I don't believe Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, genuinely has any interest in that. I think his role there is something else, quite frankly. So there will be a number of players, that aren't there for the benefit of removing some of the economic strain from the dollar or the economic control from the dollar. So I think there are people playing a dual role in this process as far as BRICS is concerned. It would be great if Africa could have its own currency.
Yep.
But I started to do a research, I hadn't completed it, of how many nations on the continent are getting their funds printed outside of the continent. And you'll be surprised how many so far. Obviously, we know that the so-called Francophone countries are tied to that scenario and were getting their French francs printed by France and so on. But it's amazing how many other countries who are not necessarily using the currency of the country that are printing their money. It's an extraordinary situation, and that has to change because it does tie you to the control of that. So we need to move away from that. And I prefer what Ross Osei was saying earlier on about what is the value? What is the currency that we really need to pin our economic resource on? And of course, it's the land and the production of the land rather than the ones being set by others. And unfortunately, I think BRICS is going to set just a counterbalance to what is currently in place. So we need something new in that regard. And I hope somebody will come up with it, because I do believe that our economic strangulation is just going to go on and on and on. The other day, somebody was reminding me that there was a time when the Naira in Nigeria was 1 to the dollar. And how much is it now? And that's a deliberate deflation of that economy. And we have to realize that now, at the moment, almost every economy is being subject to that. I brought back some I can't remember the currency from Ethiopia. I tried to put it in the bank in Zanzibar and they won't take it. No African nation, it appears, are willing to take local currency. It's either dollars or pound or yen or something else. And we need to change that, either by having a common funds or have one fund for the continent.
Okay, Brother Wanpeandi, the same to you. As Africa emerges, do you think it should be aligning with other emerging powers of Africa, or do you think it should be looking within?
Yeah, I think well, the first thing is probably look within for sources, but you cannot deny also that you sometimes need to collaborate with others nation to be able to doing, and especially for Africa, for West Africa right now, from where we're coming from, like especially the IAS country, trying to get away from the French. Now so there's so much barriers that been put onto them, so they need also to make a new political alliance. Those alliance also, the thing with those alliance is not to be dependent on them. You should be able to collaborate and do business with different other nations and equal with equal opportunity, not running from one master to another to the hand of another master. So I think it's good for them to be able to have different political alliances and business partners, but the main thing is looking within for the solution you need. And I think with especially in Burkina Faso, most of the things that the president is encouraging right now is to kind of, produce Burkinabe, consume Burkinabe, and make everything that we will be able to be self-reliant. We achieve self-reliance.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Russ Hosing, in the Caribbean, we have CARICOM, and which and that's an attempt to bring Caribbean economies together to make them stronger on the world stage, I do believe. So, looking at the Caribbean and Africa, do you think we should be weary of, say, something like BRICS have just emerged the other day? South Africa is in it, but it's very much a junior partner. China dominates.
You see, as one that has maintained the philosophy and teaching of His Imperial Majesty, I know there's only one charters for African unity, which was confirmed on the 25th of May, 1963. Africa must internally come together. Those who are signature to it, they speak a continental language which they understand when they gather, family. So as it relates to the chartering of it, that's the only solution, because you change the name doesn't change the vision. The vision remains the same, and it is for us now. This is what I said. The sixth region can only be determined by we in the sixth region. And what we're now doing is fulfilling that reality so that we can now reintegrate in the continent. And as it relates to repatriation, remember, in our history, those of you who are familiar, when the Civil War of America and the North was almost losing, Emperor Theodora gave the president, Abe Lincoln, billions of gold bullion for the freedom of our people. The same gold bullion is what the American created the Federal Reserve from. So it's not just been recently, as it relates to repatriation, as it relates to His Imperial Majesty. That is why he sent us the Ethiopian Rail Federation. And who was it sent for? We, the Black peoples of the world, in order to effect unity, solidarity, liberty, freedom, and self-determination, to secure justice and maintain the integrity of Ethiopia, which is our divine heritage. That's why it was established. And what was it for? For us to teach our people who wishes to return the ways and culture of Ethiopia. That is what should be happening for all the region, because the culture of Africa has been there for thousands of years, and all our people that is scattered here in the Caribbean, we maintain the same cultural expression, family. So there's no separation. There is now clarity, finally, because of what is now being determined at the United Nations. The reins of international peace and security is at the United Nations. What was it chartered to do? All countries, no matter big, small, whether you had power, whatever you were, first world, second world, you all had the rights to invoke the basic human rights guaranteed for your people. If you cannot guarantee the basic human rights for your own, how can you be part of an international body that wants to maintain international peace and international morality? This is what Abraham Toure is doing. He is now giving the rights to the people. He's ensuring that resources of the people belongs to the people. That is why the unity is happening so quickly in Burkina Faso, family. So it's not as if we do not know the charters. Let us fulfill it, because you can't change it by putting another name or narrative to it. And that's what's happening in South Africa. It is giving the African.
We're coming on to
you
that
don't want to
next.
go there. All right.
No, I've got a whole thing on that next. So, all right, let me go to that now. Let me go there right now. and ask that question. That would include what's happening down there. You know, African unity. In order for Africa to be truly united, right? We need, what do we need? So the question is Africa truly ready for unity now? Or are we declaring, that's part of this theme, Africa time is now, before doing the hard work required to make it real? Example, what is happening in South Africa, Tanzania? Works need to be done. What's happening in Sudan? Work need to be done. And to point out, in Sudan, we have the United Arab Emirates bankrolling the militias that's creating mayhem. What we saw the recent incursion in Mali and the greater AES states. We see what is happening in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Africa unity is now, says our theme. So let's expand on that. Before African unity can be now, how do you think we can start by beginning to fix all these places that's right now in some kind of turmoil? And in your answer, I want you to bear in mind that a lot of the agitation is coming from outside of Africa, because we know who we're up against. It's coming from outside of Africa, because a united Africa means bad news for certain people. So bearing that in mind, is Africa time now? I would like to take that first, because I like to expand. When you answer this question, just expand out as much as you like on this one. So places that I might not have touched on, you can bring it in. Is Africa time now?
Is it fulfilling? The unity of Africa cannot be stopped by no powers on earth, family. Kindly know that, and I'm not being emotionally, it's a reality. The unity of Africa is a must, not an option. And as it relates to the rest of the world, without Africa unity, the rest of the world will perish eventually. And that's a fact. So this is not just a mission to save ourselves from being annihilated. It is a mission of international peace and international morality, which we, the Africans, more than any other race on this planet, have suffered more than anyone. The gravest crime against humanity. This is why I am saying over and over again, what has been fulfilled and established and has been weakened because colonization, militias, which was the OAU, is the course of African unity. It is internally that Africa must be developed from internal, without the interference from anything from the East, China, anything from Russia, and most certainly anything from the European. We are now in a position to charter that courses independently, without any interference or asking for any assistance from any nation currently. That is a position. As it relates to our intellectual capacity, artificial intelligence, we know it. We created it. China just advanced it, the dragon. So we're not afraid of all these new invention of humanity, family. Africa time is not just me passionately or whatever. It is ordained that we're now in the fulfillment of redemption for the gravest sin that have ever been committed from one race against another that call themselves civilized. Remember, the European has never relented. We have seen what the British has done recently all over Kenya, the Mama, you name it. So you see, family, the only solution as what it was chartered, Africa must come together without the British, the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish, you name all of them. And we are not racist. We're just being realistic. The unity of Africa, only Africa can fulfill it. And as it was chartered by the great heads and the founding father of Africa unity, the seeds were sown that is now blossoming in the great president of the young one, Abraham Toure in Burkina Faso. So you cannot stop it. No matter what you do, the world cannot stop it. And as for China, remember this. 7,000 years ago, who came across the Sahara? Do you think China is not responsible for the United Emirates States of the Arab nation and what they keep on doing? We know them, family. Our history, our true story is at the Upper Nile Valley, Azana, which was never conquered or subjugated, neither religiously or sovereignly. The conquering line of Judah is the empire. The constitution that was written by His Imperial Majesty on the 16th of June, 1931, and revised in 1955 covers the empire, not a state of Ethiopia currently as it's been defined, and the continent family. Know your history and know who is the empire and who is the emperor, the last authority here on earth. Cannot be superseded, cannot be absolute, the authority of Haile Selassie. And we are speaking from a divine sovereign. Check the history of Ethiopia.
Okay, brother.
Thank you,
so,
family.
Brother Wenpeyandi, Africa time is now, say our theme.
Yeah.
Do you see coming from the Burkina Faso and the alignment of Mali and Niger? I touched on what's going on in Azania, insurrection, Africans seemingly turning against African. And I do not believe for 1 minute that is the majority, nowhere near, of the brothers and sisters in Azania that's, in collusion with what's happening. I believe the vast majority condemns it. We see what's going on in the Sudan, how Africans, as opposed to Arabs, are being systematically erased from that land. We see in the Sahel region how the people of the north are trying to come down and displace people towards the south. We see what's happening in the Congo. So, in your mind, when we say Africa time is now, is that the case?
I will say Africa time is now. But before I start, I will say the quote Kwame Nkrumah will say, Africa must unite to control its own destiny. And I think the time now is for us to realize that our unity is our strength, so our giving hands together will be our salvation. So it's time, because the continent has the world youngest population in the world. There's so much resources. We got so much. We are rich in culture. We are rich and minerals and also innovation of the young generation. So us being able to put this together will be great for Africa. It's moving slowly, but it's a mass. I think it will come, and there is forces also fighting against it. But we will get to the point, to the time where the unity has to be. So most needed is the unity of purpose. It's us realizing that we have a common value, we have a common goal to achieve, and also working together, getting rid of those borders already, like the AS now, two countries collaborating together, working together, using their strength together to defend themselves, military and collaborate together. But three is not enough. So starting with three, but I think it will expand. It will expand to most countries seeing what is done in these three regions, and that they will actually join hands together so they can work together, because it's the only way we can survive. It's the only way we can survive, because if individually, Thomas Sankara said on his speech on the African United Nations, he said, I alone, if it's I alone facing the struggle, I would not be here in the next conference. But if we were together, we stand together in one voice and say no to this, then, we are much stronger. So we have to realize that the time is now, and the time is for us to take action and not let the mistake of yesterday repeat itself. Not let the great leaders that, the ancestors have sent to us being again assassinated and killed, while we stand again and cry for it. It's for us to put hands together and support the good cause that has been taking place in Africa, and also mobilize our resources and our strength. For each one must play his role for the true liberation of Africa. So Africa is calling his sons and daughters, wherever you are, wherever little you can contribute. Don't think it's too little. Each one have a contribution to play in this African unity. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Brother Glenroy, again to you. Africa time is now. So what would you say to when we look at what's happening in Tanzania, in the Sudan? What you say when you look what's happening in the Congo? And furthermore, what do you say when you see the interference, especially the Gulf states that deliberately destabilizing certain countries? And to be controversial, do you think Africa, when I say Africa, I'm talking about the entire map of Africa, from Cairo to the Cape, from Dakar to Djibouti, entire Africa. Do you think there can be true unity in Africa with the states in North Africa? Do you think they have bought into that vision?
We say a united Africa, but who is fighting for a united Africa? We know who's fighting to divide Africa, but other than the Sahel, who is fighting to unite Africa? There's too many times we keep hearing stories about neighboring countries are going to join the Sahel, that Ghana was going to join the Sahel, that Togo was helping the Sahel because they had access to the sea. But who else is fighting for the unification that we talk about? Because we hope, as everyone does, that unification will make sense and we don't have to have a military conflict about it. But I think we need to be realistic. The mobilization by the forces that want to prevent African unity will have to be fought. It's not an accident that Macron meets in Kenya. Kenya is not a former French colony. This means his desire and intention are expanding. What's next? Will the Italian be turning up in Ethiopia? Can we forget about that little skirmish and our attempt to invade Ethiopia? Europeans appear to think that they can just return without actually acknowledge the crimes that they have committed. They are the obstruction to unification. And many of our people don't recognize that. I can't remember how many leaders turned up in Nairobi or wherever Macron was being entertained. But clearly some did. Rwanda, of all places. So we know who's fighting to prevent unification. What we won't talk about is what length will we go to fight those who are trying to prevent unification. Will we be willing to have a military conflict around the issue of unification? Because what's happening, as you rightly pointed out in Sudan, with the Janjaweed, Arabized African, is an extraordinary situation. Is it a group of people who have no concept beyond what they're being told by the AEU? Yes, that's the problem. As far as South Africa is concerned, we keep refusing to see the not very hidden hands of the European nations that are still there. I'm old enough to remember that these are the same people, the same mentality that were defending the apartheid regime. This is in Carter reincarnation. This is in Carter. And it isn't just about the Zulu nation either, but this is about a mentality that see better alliance with Europeans in South Africa than others, than fellow Africans. But we've been here before, and I would even question whether we ever left here. Because people might forget that Mandela made Buthelezi the Home Secretary, or whatever the role is, in the first government. And he was deporting Mozambicans, Zimbabwean. I was there in South Africa when this was going on. So we've been here before. But prior to that, during apartheid, this was the role that certain traitors among the African community were playing. And we're not making the effort to expose that. We're standing around in shock. Look, Africans are attacking Africans. As if it's never happened. As if we don't know the source of it. Who is fighting for African unity? Who is saying that our objective is the unification of all Africa? It's a nice phrase, we keep using it. It's a nice dream, we keep having it, and we should have that dream, we should have that aspiration. But are we willing to fight for it? Because the other side are fighting and are killing us to prevent African unification. I was told by South Sudanese that creating South Sudan was so that the forces of Pan-Africanism in Sudan would now build an opposition to what was happening in the north. And we know the first few months, the conflict that started in South Sudan. So there are forces that are winning the struggle to prevent unification. And we need to be serious about how we are going to oppose those forces. We haven't had that discussion. We haven't had a discussion about our sisters joining. We haven't had that discussion around how we will support military intervention. People don't want to talk about that. But it's not going to be done without some effort to fight, really fight for unification. And what's happening in Congo is a prime example. How many of those neighboring countries have invaded the Congo to steal their wealth? Uganda, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, and who else? They're not fighting for unification. They're not stealing the wealth of the Congo in order to unify Africa. So we need to identify those that are working against the idea of unification. It's sound bite. We shouldn't be making sound bites. We should be saying what we are going to do to make it possible. And I hope I'm wrong, but I think it requires militarization. We have to face up to that because the enemy is militarized. I don't think Macron went to Kenya just to shake hands and tell people to shut up who were disturbing the meeting. He was there to make deals and provide weaponry because Kenya has also been involved in Sudan and Congo. Remember, the Janjaweed leader was in Kenya selling gold and buying weapons in Kenya. So Ruto is an enemy of African unification. Let's be very clear about that. And we ought to identify those people we know are not working to the same objective. So really, and just on the South African situation, I would implore anybody else listening to this, do not make this jump that a lot of people are doing, and I'm glad you said it, Chair, that it isn't the majority, it isn't even a large fraction of the people in South Africa who are part of this process, but they're getting the headline and they're getting the attention. And the government, who must see all of them on social media, have their picture, be able to identify them, breaking the law, have never, to my knowledge yet, maybe they're doing it, but I've not heard of it, go and arrest people who are taking the law in their hand and ill-treating other Africans. When will it happen? So I really want to say, let's find out who's willing to fight for African unification. It won't be a cakewalk. It won't just happen. And if people think it will, then we are living a dream. Thank you.
Okay. Unfortunately, Dr. Truthbay has been trying to connect it briefly and it dropped out again. It's a shame. Now we're coming up into our summing up part. Another part of the title, it says the roadmap to freedom. So in summing up, I would like you to say, how do you see this roadmap to freedom? If you were putting it together, what would you do? What would you prioritize? How would you see it, turning out? Roadmap to freedom. So
simple.
All right. Ras Hosing, take it away.
Family, this is why it is so important for ones to know what is actually Liberation Day and what is it we are called and celebrating. Liberation Day wasn't liberation. It was the charter that was to bring liberation to Africa. The charter hasn't changed. And what should happen? South Africa, the current problem of xenophobia, it has given the African Union a final opportunity to come together for internal security, all 53 with Ethiopia 54, send their best military personnel as an African Union. No NATO, no external forces, peace, charities, no one. It is the responsibility of the OAU, the African Union family. Abraham Toure, as signatory to the African Union, you have the authority to call an emergency meeting, call all of the personnel, because I'm quite sure what is happening in South Africa is a violation of basic human rights. And it cannot be allowed, knowing what apartheid has done to South Africa. And as it relates to the problem of South Africa is the maintenance of the so-called, these white city, all white city of the so-called Jews, the Antichrist. So when we remove, just as what Abraham Toure has done in Burkina Faso, when we finally remove, which is a must, because they cannot be resting in South Africa until when we remove the bios, is the boas, what they call themselves. They are the last thorn of African unity, because they want to control South Africa as Zana with all the gold and the diamond that continue to fuel Israel, the so-called Zionist Christians. So it is important, family, that the African Union, under led by Abraham Toure, call an immediate meeting and let us see the African Union finally working for the interests as it was chartered on the 25th of May, 1963. So simple.
Okay.
The apparatus is there, but it is being dysfunctioning by so-called corrupted leaders of Africa, as you all know, family. We know it, but that doesn't say we abandon it. What we do, the right ones now take control of it and empower it, because it's already chartered for us to fulfill it. It is so simple. As for the United Nations, the United Nations came in, as you all know, in 1948. What was its purpose? To ensure that what happened in the Second World War and the violation was not repeated. And as for the charter of it, having addressed the League of Nations, His Majesty is the one that chartered the international human rights. That is why every country who is signed to the United Nations, it is your right to now make sure it is a law in your country that you guarantee the basic human rights for your people. United Nations is the only hope. And remember, we have the majority. The 52 nations that said no. 53 African states. Hold on. 53 African states has been observant status since the formation. We now have the position where the 52 who abstain, they're now observant status. As for Israel, America, and Argentina, they are barred. They have no rights of international. And we know that the United Nations headquarters cannot be maintained in New York. That's why it was made of glass. It must now be established in Africa. Believe you me, because only Africa can maintain international peace and morality and be able to seek solidarity with all nations who wants peace here on earth, because we have the resources that you all need, family. So we must seek solidarity with those who wants to live. That's what this is. Let us work it in, because the wheel is already being done. United Nations Charter and the African Union.
So
We
what you
can't
say,
change
that
them. Let us
roadmap
fulfill
is
it.
being already laid as far as you see. It's already
Yes, it
down. Okay, brother Wen Payandi, same to you. Roadmap to freedom. Would you say what's happening in the AES country provides a blueprint for that roadmap to freedom?
Yes, I will agree on that. I will say that yes, that's what's happening in the AES country, provide a blueprint to African freedom, but also Africa must first liberate himself from imported religions and take care of their tradition and culture and become back to themselves, because most places in Africa are kind of I would not use the word alienated, but they're under embraced different religions and that are alien to the continent, and that itself is a problem that occurring in the north of Mali and north of Burkina Faso, as we can see today. And also Africa being able to gain his political freedom and economical independence. That's a must. And investing strongly on the youth. Like I said, also I believe in the African youth now. There's the largest in the world, and they're ready. I think we should give them opportunity and also invest in education, mostly on education, so African can truly be liberated and take his freedom.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Brother Glenroy, the roadmap to freedom, how do you see that? And can you see a, say, striking example anywhere on the continent that you think could be extrapolated in terms of using that as a roadmap that could lead us to, that could drive the African Renaissance that we so much hope for?
I still have aspiration, hope, perhaps over aspiration in regards to the regional structure. And let's be clear, the regional structure was an economic manifestation by the UN, of all places, about north, south, east, west, and so on, as economic region. But I still have a view that they could work together, become a block, and each of those blocks fitting in together and create a unification. But at the moment, there is distortion. I've seen a map recently of the electrification. And when you look at it, the countries in the north have regular electrification, and countries in the south are struggling with very few availability. Now, here in Zanzibar, there are lots of, for example, street lights and other places that are using solar energy or trying to utilize solar energy. There need to be more of that right across the continent. So one of the, I think, way in which we can improve the situation for improvement and unification is resource, not only by fossil fuel, but also clean energy should be more a thing here than anywhere else, and it isn't. But if we get the regional structures to take up some of that work around working together, it will, I think, I hope, lead to a better situation. But we have the Sahel, and we also have ECOSOC. So we have two regions that, unless they actually find a way to cooperate, are in conflict. And certainly the French still intend, and the Western empowering still intend, to utilize Nigeria to attack Sahel. I have no doubt that is still on their agenda. That Christmas present, according to Donald Trump, of a missile being launched against Nigeria, is to show that they can do it. And therefore, we have to take note of that. But those regional aspirations that I talk about West Africa, is in danger. Where we are here in Tanzania, the president is playing a game with the regional structure because we are in East Africa. But she claimed to be part of Southern Africa, because where we are geographically, they would consider, people would consider playing that game about are we in the south, are we in the east? But I still think regional structure should be taken seriously as part of that roadmap towards unification. I could be wrong, because there are elements within all of those regions. The north is problematic, is real problematic, because so many of those nations are also part of the Arab League, as you know. It's one of the things that Libya suffered from. So I think that those questions about that has not been answered. So there is work to be done by all the regions, and perhaps the roadmap may be a bit skewed in how the unification progress. But we need, on the continent, to start taking seriously regional structure. That would be my view towards that. And I think it can be done. It can be done if people take it seriously rather than just see it as an economical opportunity, etc., etc. Those blocks should be trading with each other in the first instance, and then be trading with other regions. I don't see that happening quickly, but that should be it. Lastly, I've not visited it yet. As you know, as I said at the outset, I used to drive trains for London Transport. I'm told that we have a new railway system here in Tanzania. I haven't seen it. I haven't visited it, but I visited the railway in Kenya, and it seems to me very much needed that we have a combined rail system to be available for transporting and economic exchange between countries. That's another part of that process, I think. And that shouldn't depend on the regional structure. Yeah, because a train from, I don't know, Kenya going all the way to South Africa is a good idea and a good means by which people can be transported across the continent. I think the railway is still a opportunity that need exploiting. People suggest, oh, well, we've got aircraft. What's being said, Russell raised the issue about cross-Atlantic flights from the continent. That's something we've been looking forward to and hoping would happen, and I hope it will still happen. I don't want to go to Europe when I need to go to the Caribbean, but I think that just appears to be reaching out and hasn't happened. So I really want us to focus on our integration here, even if it's on a transport level. So I'll leave it there, Jay.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Well, sadly, we are running out of time. We are coming to an end. But before we do that, I'd just like to say here that thanks for the summary from everybody. And in terms of African Liberation Day, as you know, today is our first session. There'll be another. Our main session would be on Monday, the 25th. In Birmingham at the Legacy Center of Excellence. And it's an excellent venue. It's a venue that was used last year. And I'm proud to say it's a venue that's PACM friendly. So here on, I'd like to say again, thanks everybody for coming. And when we look at the overall titled The Grand African Renaissance Part 5. As you can see, for the last 5 years, we've been staying with this theme for the simple reason, last year when we did the Grand African Renaissance and we looked across the Pan-African world, we saw progress being made. So hopefully after this year, by next year, we will see some more progress being made. And the history of ALD is this. It used to be a 3-day event back in the day. First 2 days was held in an arena. The last day, a march through the locality and a big congregation in an open space. As time progressed, that wasn't the case anymore. Now, how did we come to be online? Do you remember back in 2020, this thing called pandemic happened that forced us online. In a way, it was a blessing in disguise because holding ALD online brought us a much wider audience, much greater participation. So even though we are back in the physical on Monday, it was decided to keep one of the sessions online. And I'm glad we did because the esteemed guest, thank you, Ras Hossein, immense contribution. Thank you, Brother One Payandi, again, immense contribution, and I hope people are now more knowledgeable of what is happening in the AES region of Africa. And Brother Glenroy, what can I say? You know, you're a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah.
You know, you can give, and your ability to analyze and break things down is brilliant. And for you now to be based on the continent and be able to relay back has an impact because people in the UK for many years organized with you, knew you well. So, you know, when you say things, more people are likely to listen to what you are saying because you understand here and now you're getting to understand there. So what quickly I like to, let me see if I can find it quickly. Where is it? Just to show the flyer of Monday where we will be holding LD, so a bit more information can be had.
Can I just quickly say to Russ, I'll get in touch with you. You asked a question earlier on about GAC, and of course, people are aware of the problems within GAC. But I'll talk to you offline. I think you're on the taxation list. If I don't have your number, then hopefully you can get it from somewhere, and we'll keep in touch. Comrade, I've been meaning to try to get to Burkina Faso, look at the ADDI initiative. I couldn't join, I couldn't make that, but I'm going to be there at some point. We are in Gambia later this year in October, and it's just down the road geographically, so why not?
Yes, it's not far.
Okay, that's brilliant. And just to say, this is the flyer for Monday, and you can see we have more esteemed guests with us. We again have Brother Juan Payandi and Sister Asha. Sister Asha, based in the UK and in Malawi, so she'll be giving us a brilliant insight. We have a brilliant academic, Patricia Daly, who appeared at our ALD a few years ago, and again, she's a wealth of information. And then we have one of our activists in Manchester, Brother Washington. So again, it's a day worth coming out for. Apart from that, there'll be book reviews, there'll be African market, which is a must. Because again, when we talk about economics, again, it starts from somewhere. It starts small and it will grow. And of course, we will having refreshment and sales, entertainment right throughout. So it's another brilliant day to be had. And like I said, even as a member of PACM, who came in years after it was formed, I like to give thanks and praises to PACM and to the members who founded PACM, that has been able for the last 51 years to continuously hold African Liberation Day, because it's know through African Liberation Day we can reach out to our brothers and sisters across the Pan-African world. So everybody in PACM know who they are. If I mention one, I'll have to mention 100. So I'll just say also all PACM members, old and young, you know, all praises to them for keeping up the struggle. Sometimes it has been a struggle, but it's a must. When we finish on the 25th, we'll be turning our mind to the 25th, 2027 without hesitation. So again, big up PACM. So I'd like to end now. Any last thing anybody want to contribute before we end this stream? Any last thing from it? Feel free.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Almighty for this wonderful gathering in the presence of the ancestors. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Africa unity is not an option, it's a must. And I must commend all our brothers and our sisters in the UK for this wonderful work. I wasn't aware of this until recently. And I was very honored to be invited to even speak of African liberation and the relevance of it as we now enter the 21st century. So I give thanks, family, to all our brothers that was with us. Give thanks to all of you. And may the Most High continue to guide, protect, and endow us with his knowledge and wisdom so that we will fulfill his will in this time of our victory, because the victory is in the hands of the great Africans. Give thanks, family.
And finally, I like to send out...
The struggle continue, my brother. And anyone who can attend physically, please do so. It is an experience, and it may feel like it's contracting, but I can assure you from my perspective, and having been there a few years ago, it is a very necessary event, and I hope it will continue for well after another 50 years, because our struggle will continue. Asante sana.
Yeah, asante sana. And I'd just like to end by saying again, I'd like to apologize. Dr. Truthbay has been trying to connect. It wasn't to be, but don't worry, we'll be in touch. We have many more meetings, and we look forward to inviting you to another one of our meetings, which I hope will be much more successful in you connecting. So until then, see everybody who can make it on Monday, the 25th of May at the Legacy Center of Excellence in Birmingham.
Wonderful. Yeah, I hope you have a great time, my brother.
Thank you very much. It was an honor and a pleasure to be among you guys.